All right. Now you can hear me. All right. Yeah, I'd like to welcome you all to the Black Comic Book Universe. This program you're watching, Black Comic Book Universe, presented by Peep Game Comics, exclusively here on the Experience. Please help us out by hitting the share and giving us a like and a follow. Then make sure to tune in on our original programming 7 days a week. And also, tomorrow we'll be starting this all over again. We have two more guests that are closing out today. Right now we have Rodney Barnes.
Hey.
How are you doing, sir?
I was scared when I couldn't hear you for a second there.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know if it was me or you.
No, that was me. And then you're the writer. You're the creator and writer of Philadelphia.
Yep.
It is a phenomenal book, and I don't think it gets nowhere near as much hype as it should. So I'm glad you were able to come on and share your experience with that book.
Thank you.
But a quick history about what you do in your background. You actually working in television, yes?
Yeah, television is I guess my 9 to 5 for the past 20, 25 years.
Okay, and what shows will people be familiar with that you work on?
My Wife and Kids, The Boondocks, Everybody Hates Chris, Marvel's Runaways, American Gods, HBO's Vinyl, off the top of Wu-Tang, an American Saga, and currently I'm doing the Lakers scripted show for HBO.
Okay, and did you mention Black Lightning?
Didn't do Black Lightning.
Oh, you didn't do Black Lightning? Okay,
that wasn't me.
Okay, so but it's still like a very prestigious resume there. What exactly brought you to the comic book platform? Is this your first comic book?
No, I did Falcon for Marvel in 2017, and then I did Lando, Double or Nothing for Marvel and Lucasfilm in 2018, and I currently do a book, Quincredible, that I've been doing since the end of 2018, and now Philadelphia.
So what is it about the medium, or which do you have a preference as to which medium you like to work in best?
I mean, they all have their virtues. I think comics give you the most freedom. You certainly don't do it for the money. They take me back to a time when I guess there's some innocence of just wanting to tell a story, and in its purest form. Television and film are more collaborative dynamics where you can write the best story you think you can write, but somebody's going to have something to say about it.
Okay, I see what you mean. And so, which brings me to Philadelphia. I was really fascinated about the story, the dynamics between the. Well, first, can you give us a little, a short idea as to what the story is about? I can go on and on, but I want to.
Yeah, Philadelphia is about a current political state told through the prism of vampires. You have a father-son duo that's on the trail of second president of the United States, John Adams, who is a vampire, and is attempting to make America great again, and by turning the downtrodden and the people who have kind of fallen through the cracks of Philadelphia into vampires to rise up and basically take over the world.
Right, and I'm not even sure if that does the book justice, because actually when I read it, the way the Adams comes into the storyline with like totally, it's such a curveball the way you wrote it, and I think it shows exactly what you mean as far as that freedom that you have as a writer in comics. That is sort of like you can tell this story that seems like so off the wall and so nonsensical to some degree, or whatever the case might be, that you don't have to, debate the storyline or where the story is going with anybody. You can, put the story on the page and see what it goes how it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were, in fact, when I was pitching it to my artist and partner, Jason Sean Alexander, I pitched it as Hamilton meets Sanford and Son meets Dracula. And so that was the log line, I guess. And I've tried to live up to that ever since.
Yeah, the father and son dynamic, which it seems to be a recurring theme in a few other books we talked about today too. Was this a person come from your personal experience, or it's something?
I didn't grow up with my father, and I was a very young father, and so I had a lot to learn because I didn't have a father. And so being able to sort of come from a cathartic place, be able to examine father-son relationships. And then I'd never really seen an authentic one in the horror genre, coming from the culture. I'd never really seen anything that felt authentic to me. I've seen a lot of great films, but that focused on the intrinsic dynamic that happens between a father and a son. I hadn't seen that before. So I figured, what they say, when you haven't seen it, why not try to do it?
Yeah, I think it's such a interesting dynamic in the sense that this father figure is leading his son, through this, investigation and stuff like that. He's been able to, and I guess the way you wrote it, that his father is able to sort of mentor him in a way that he wasn't able to do, prior to this whole, vampire, epidemic that rose up.
Mm-hmm. I think it's more of, when my father passed away and, we had some issues that we never really resolved. And so I always asked myself, if we had more time, would we have been able to, make things work out better? Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with vampires, you're dealing with immortality. So time isn't an issue. Right. So what happens between the father and son in Philadelphia is, yes, they have more time, but they still have to do the work. They still have to figure out a way to reconcile their differences and hopefully move forward.
Yeah, I had to commend you. My father sounded a lot. Well, he wasn't as harsh as your father, but it was like, it's something about the tone that seemed very familiar.
Yes.
My father is a Methodist pastor. Grew up in the South, but so it's like it was something about that character's tone that it seemed so familiar when I started reading his dialogue. It's like, okay, yeah, this is my father in a way.
It's very generational too.
Right.
It sounds like a father from the 70s, trying to talk to somebody, a young brother in the 21st century. You're not always gonna, meet minds.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what other books that do you have in the works? Are you planning on extending this story?
Yeah, there's a spinoff. I'm reaching for it now. Nita Hall's Nightmare blog that is part of the extension of Philadelphia. Hopefully we can drop that towards the end of the year. The way Image will be the publisher again. The way Image works, got to have 3 books in the can. We've got 2.5 right now. So that'll come out. Jason and I have another book, Monarch miniseries. I'm looking at my board right now. That'll hopefully come out towards the end of the year. I'm doing a Cloak and Dagger story for Marvel. That's part of the King in Black storyline that'll drop towards the end of March. The 3rd arc of Quincredible I'm working on right now. And I've started my own publishing imprint, Zombie Love Studios, and we'll be doing Blackula. I've got the rights through MGM. Hopefully, if we can finish signing these papers towards the end of the year, and then 2 other books that'll come out from that as well. So it's a lot of stuff.
All right. So listening to everything that you're working on, I'm envisioning that meme of Kermit the Frog at the typewriter. He's just like, his hands are flailing.
Yeah. You could do that with me. It'd be bigger, but it would be the same it'd be the same rhythm. It's a lot of, I was up at 4 this morning. That's why I haven't shaved. I'm doing 2 books for Dynamite as well. And so it's always a deadline someplace between that, and I haven't even gotten into TV and film. So it's a lot of stuff going on at the same time right now.
As a writer, how do you keep all that straight?
And you don't. I mean, I think sometimes I have a board and I have an assistant, and anxiety, the way my anxiety works is as long as I have some place to put it, it's like putting it into a story is probably the most productive place to put it, rather than some of the other places I'd probably put it. So I think it actually works in a good way. It's stressful. I mean, it's stressful always being under the deadline. I think I was listening to Joe before the session you guys were doing before me, and he was talking about he goes for a walk and he meditates and he gets up and his ritual drinks some tea, and I'm thinking I don't do nothing. I just get up, I start writing. It's like that's probably why y'all gonna be talking about Rodney's gone, because he worked himself into an early grave. But yeah, man, it's a lot of work. I'm very, very grateful for it, and so there you go.
It's interesting. I'm a graphic designer by trade, and I was on a panel in front of for young people, interns that want to get into the design field. And I said, and someone asked about how do you get out of a creative rut. And I actually mentioned to them that since I work in the newspaper industry, the deadline itself, the pressure that I'm under, is actually helps me to get out of that rut. It's like, because I can't afford to stay there.
Yeah, for me, it's my mortgage. My mortgage are these kids. These kids every day they keep wanting to eat. They keep coming. I'm hungry again. So between that and these bills coming, I can't rut. There's no room for a rut. Let's put it that way.
So do you have any fear of writing a bad story, or you just totally every story, every time I've written bad stories, but it's not just fear. I've had that fear come true. I think the whole thing is what I've found that's given me more confidence is if I give a story the time that is necessary, if I just sit with it long enough, I will end up with something that I'm proud of, satisfied with, can live with, regardless of how it's received. I know that I did my part to do the best that I could to make it the best that it could be. If I rush it, if I allow those people to say, where's it? And I hit send too early, it usually ends up as regret. So, it really gives me some semblance of confidence to know that if I put the right amount of work in, typically I end up in a good place. Okay. How do you, which of the genres, because you seem to work across a lot of different genres, which of the genres do you like the most?
Horror is number one. Horror, mystery, supernatural. I try to blend. If I had like a perfect world where I could just do that for a living. I remember I was hanging out with Jordan Peele at his office not too long ago, and he had a Fangoria t-shirt on, and he just looked so calm and peaceful when he came out of his office to greet me. And I was jealous immediately. And he was like, man, I don't have to do comedy ever again. If I could just do this, I'm cool. And that's sort of how I feel about horror and mystery and supernatural. If I could just do that, I would be happy. But then again, I have, if I come up with a story for something that might not be in that genre, a cool superhero story or something that's, that speaks to me, then I could find the same pleasure in that. But just off the top of my head, horror, supernatural, mystery.
What is it? Because I've noticed that horror is one of the most popular genres for like a lot of Black creators right now. What is it about the horror genre that's so appealing and it's able to create such great narratives in terms of our culture?
I think we haven't had a lot of it told by us. Every so often you see well, let me go back to the past. When I was coming up, most of the Black horror stories either had to do with racism or they weren't just the story. Not to say that you can't include racism into it. I think Lovecraft Country did a fine job, but there's so many different entry points and so much territory that hasn't been mined that, we really have an opportunity, whether you're talking about from this generation, from the past, there's so many stories, there's so much that just hasn't been done. And I think it speaks to trauma. And I think anytime you get a culture that has endured as much trauma as we have, there's stories, requisite stories to go with that feel real. And when you're telling them from an intrinsic place, they land, Dracula, Frankenstein, and Wolfman, all of that came from that universal, those universal monsters all came from some fear, whether it was fear of immigration, fear of the supernatural, with Godzilla, fear of nuclear power. There was something. And I think in our culture, because, we have so much from slavery to Jim Crow, civil rights, mass incarceration, various epidemics, and, always having something to look around the corner, look over your shoulder of danger that's coming, that there's stories that you can place into that to give it context to how it feels. For me, horror has always been the stakes, life and death. Comedy doesn't necessarily have that. It's hard to feel like there's a lot of danger when everybody's laughing. And so, but in horror, you may fall in love with a protagonist, and that person that you care about and identify with, you put that person in danger, you've got everybody's attention.
Mm-hmm. What is it about? I've always felt, especially with some of the horror that we've been creating lately, is that it seems to be extremely empowering compared to other genres of entertainment. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, it's a defiance that's in it. There's something in it, whether it's I look forward to the new Candyman, but you felt it in Lovecraft Country, you feel it in a lot of different works. Get Out sort of had it. It's like you can speak to a truth and add fantasy and horror elements to it that make it so it doesn't feel like medicine. It feels like it's still entertainment, but it's entertainment that has layers and substance to it. And I think for me, that's the best kind of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. We actually have a question here.
Oh
yeah. So
how did I end up on Wu-Tang? Thank you. I'm glad you love the show. I was working on the show American Gods, and I happened to be standing in the parking lot because we were on a break. My phone rang, and it was the RZA, and who just gave me a blurb for Philadelphia. Thank you, Riz. And he basically offered me the opportunity to be on the show, to write on the show and help produce the show. And it was a great experience. It was cold. I will say that if I'd never have to go back to Staten Island again in the winter. I learned something about myself that I don't ever need to be that cold ever again. But the process and the environment of Wu-Tang is still family. And, I miss those guys. I love them, and it was just a great experience.
Oh wow! Do you have any stories that sort of illustrate the camaraderie?
Just that we were all able to. And when I say camaraderie, I'm speaking mostly to the writers' room and the producers. I mean, we just had a natural rhythm and flow. And RZA and Alex C, who ran the show, we were all able to bond in such a unique way that it starts to feel like family. It's like television writing and writing in general can be a very lonely experience. You oftentimes are shutting the door, going in a room, and you're by yourself for however long you do what you do. And the camaraderie sometimes when you find a group of folks that just fit together, and that's what we had in the Wu-Tang room and on the Wu-Tang set, it just felt like family. And just the whole general vibe and flow, of course, again, led by the RZA, who's a good brother. And I miss those guys. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I know they have a lot of ties and are fans of comics. So
Mhm.
I think that that experience might have been,
just the fusion of comics and pop culture to the music and martial arts and all of that sort of makes their music evergreen. It's like it doesn't it's still relevant to this day, and I think that's why it's become such a it's almost got like that. It's more than a cult following, but it's just you have so many followers. It's like a religion in a way. People, if you love Wu-Tang, you love Wu-Tang. And, I've come to find that as much as a lot of other things that I've done, Wu-Tang stands out a lot. I get a lot of Wu-Tang questions.
Yeah, I imagine so. And what I've always hoped was that there would be, a way to someday bring that type of, I don't know, hype and notoriety to comics. It just seems like it's such a hard to pull off.
I think, anytime, I think distribution plays a role in it because not a lot of folks have comic book shops, in their neighborhoods. I think comic books cost a lot more than they did when I was coming up. It's like when I was a kid, comic books were everywhere. They were in the corner store, they were in the liquor store, drugstore, everywhere you went, there was one of those spinners. Like I got one in the corner right there of comic books. And so I was surrounded by them all the time. And now I remember I'm from Annapolis, Maryland, and I took some kids. I went back home to talk to some kids from my elementary school, and they had never seen a comic book before. They thought comic books were like the movies that you see in the TV shows. They didn't know what a comic book was. And I think it's such a niche thing that, just the process of spending $4 or $5 for a comic book for a kid might not be the most realistic thing first. And then even if you have the money, finding a comic book shop that's close to you that you can frequent on a regular basis in order to develop a relationship. It's like most of the guys I know that love comics, it's a relationship that you make. Like every Wednesday, I go to the comic shop. I probably buy $40, $50 worth of comic books, read 3 of them, and still go back next week, even though I got a whole stack of books I haven't read yet. It's just it's something that I've just been doing for so long. I don't know if kids have that same entry point in order to be as connected to it as grown folks do. So it's hard to make it what you were saying, like Wu-Tang. The music was, if you listen to the radio back in the day, the music was free. And or you could go out and buy the CD or however you got it. And you could make that relationship there. With comics is just it's a harder road to hoe, but I do think TV and film have helped keep the characters alive. If we can present them in a qualitative way, I think it'll continue to do that.
How did you it's interesting you brought up visiting a comic book shop. I was telling the last comic book shop that I visited on a regular basis, the producer of the show today, he owned it. He doesn't own it anymore, but basically, and I told him that it was like finding a church home. Like when you find a comic book shop that you go to on a regular basis, it gets to the point it's not even about the comics, it's about the community.
The energy of all of it. Yeah.
It is hard if you haven't grown up around it, then it's just hard to,
it's a culture. It's a culture with comics. Like I said, there was the initial entry point for me because, I had a convenience store that was less than a mile, maybe a quarter of a mile. I was a kid, so it seemed longer when you're a kid, but it was like right there on the corner. So when I got out from school, I could go right there and buy a bunch of comic books, and they were relatively inexpensive. I used my grass cutting money or whatever, and I had a big stack of comic books. And then when they became, we had a comic shop, I think Jeppy's Comic World. This was before he started distributing them, Diamond and all of that. We could go to the store, his comic shop in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, and that would be like a Saturday trip with me and a couple of buddies, and we would go up and we would buy comic books. But it was still connected to that same relationship of what you said, seeing a comic shop where it wasn't just a spinner. The whole store was dedicated to comics and fantasy and all of this stuff. And you saw stuff that you probably wouldn't see, that you only saw in magazines everywhere. That was incredible. But it built this relationship with me emotionally that endured through good times, bad times, ups, downs. Comics were always there, being able to read them, being able to now write them. But those characters and all of that, which is really a huge part of my life and how I entertain myself. And I would love, even if there was some way to give them away to kids, just so that they could develop that same relationship. And it's hard too now that comics aren't really for kids in the same way. It's like they're so adult and they almost seem like advertisements for the movies that it's not the same, it's not the same relationship, but it's still there to be had. And it's still, I think there's still time on the clock to be able to create some dynamic, to get folks into it the same way.
Yeah, it's actually started to get back into collecting comics. I've been reading most of my comics digitally. So I rarely go into a shop anymore, but I've recently, the last 2-3 weeks, I've been going back looking for number ones of Black creative teams, people that are basically like yourself, David Walker, that basically are writing, comic books, whether it's independent or for the big two. And what I'm noticing is that those books, from a collector standpoint, are extremely valuable because they're so rare. And
I saw on eBay they had a Philadelphia the Matina cover for $500, and I was like, $500. I got 10 of them right behind me on the spinner rack right now.
Man, I'm telling you, I saw that because I've been looking for books like specifically, and what happens is those variant covers are extremely valuable, and I've been noticing the trend. It's with a lot of these Black creators, like recently. It's like especially if they have a all Black creative team, or it's the Black writer. It's like the lead characters are Black. It's something about this culture in comics, this moment in comics, that is creating some value there. I can't necessarily put my finger on it.
Well, they don't make very many. They don't make, when you get the variants, especially if it's a hot variant by a hot writer, and they're only making 25 of them or 50 of them or however many, the scarcity, is the thing that I think drives up the desire. And you even see them in the shop sometimes. They're like $20 just coming out of the box. They're charging, $20-25 for a variant cover because it's so scarce.
Yep. Yes, exactly. And then because I came across I've been looking for some of these hip hop variants that Marvel put out, and some of those covers are extremely valuable now. Even some of even Bitter Root #1 is extremely valuable right now. It's just I've been very interested in this dynamic that we have. I'm not sure even if it's by chance or by design that we have brought all this value to the comic book industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think to what you said before, beyond just getting new readers in, for the old heads or for the diehard comic collectors, I think variants, getting hot variants in is a great way to create some sense of visibility for your book. It can create a tone that makes it more attractive. I know most folks. I was on a panel the other day, and one of the folks said something I had never really considered in that way. Like, when people first go into a comic shop to buy books, they look at the cover if it's something new to say, and that cover is or they may flip through and look at the art to say whether or not they're going to get it. So if you get a really hot cover, sometimes they won't even read the book. They're buying it for the cover. And or the collectible aspect of it, like you were talking about.
Right.
So, in Philadelphia, we have 2, sometimes 3 variants. And Jason Sean Alexander, the artist for the book, he's been able to get some phenomenal folks to come in. Everybody from Neil Adams back in the day, Bill Sienkiewicz, just like everybody who's Scotty Young, the Patina covers, Patrick Reynolds. Like, we've had some really great guys do a lot of covers. And Todd McFarlane did our cover for 12 variant for us. And so, it just makes folks who are natural fans, it gives them some semblance of, oh, I know that guy, or that's my favorite artist, or they're fans of that art, so they're willing to give the book a look because they dig the cover.
Yeah, I was just sharing this with a few guys the other day, that the last time I was in the shop and I was looking at the racks. For as long as I've been in comics, like I grew up reading comics in the 90s. So that just when, the comic book shops are coming around and stuff like that, the direct market was taking off. I was in this shop recently, and that's like, it felt like I had seen it all before. Like, I was looking at everything on all those racks, and it just like, I just got really bogged down all of a sudden. Like, I didn't want to pick anything up because it just seemed like I've read this before. I've seen this major event before. I've seen this type of character, this world bending, idea before. What have you found? Have you found books that have sort of broken that for you?
It's mostly independence. I mean, I know how you feel. Like, I grew up where Infinity Gauntlet was a big deal. Crisis was a big deal. It's like when it was only like each company had maybe one a year, or maybe 2 a year, where all the characters were getting together. And now it seems like every 3 months, there's this a big bad is coming to destroy everything. So it doesn't feel as, how can I say it? You feel like you're being inundated sometimes with events,
Exactly.
So I get how you feel. And for me, being able to read, Something Is Killing the Children, or Ice Cream Man, or the indies, feel so personal. It's like what you were saying about Philadelphia. They feel it's a different tone than the big 2. I love the big 2, but it's hard to completely do, like, Batman and Superman have so many stories that have been told about them, and they've had so many different iterations of the character being really, really strong or not that strong, or it's hard to feel like this is new. But every once in a while you find it, dead, alive, back. Maybe he's dead this time. His father came back. No, that wasn't his father. That was a Robin. It was how many? I don't know how many Robins there are. Sometimes people say, "Oh, that was Robin." I was like, Dick Grayson is Robin. No, there's a bunch of other Robins. They're black ones. There's all kinds of Robins now. And so, once you've seen a lot, and I can understand for this generation that maybe hasn't been around as long as you and I have been reading books, when they see an event, they could get excited by it in a way that you would hope somebody would get excited by it. I get it, and I also get it from a publisher's point of view. When you have a struggling market, you have to do something to generate interest. You have to keep injecting new life into it. I think for old heads like me, it just makes it hard to follow the continuity because, every year you got the new 52, you got the new this or the new that. And that it doesn't feel like you can't just jump in. It feels like if you weren't there from the beginning, you don't know, oh, this happened and that happened. So I get how it could be frustrating to go into a store and feel overwhelmed. But that's why, like I said, the indies, I start from the indies and then kind of move out. I'm in the store anyway. If I'm over with looking at the indie books and I find 3, 4, 5 that I really dig or I'm willing to give a shot, then I bleed over into Marvel and DC, and I look at what's interesting, and who's on Black Panther now, and who's doing this, and who's doing that, and I end up picking up 10 more books just because I'm there.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that where you find your inspiration for all your writing, or where do you find your inspiration?
Again, I told you that mortgage. You can't forget that quick. My mortgage is my inspiration. My kids, and private school is expensive. That's my inspiration. I think what comics do for me is kind of like therapy in a way.
Okay.
It connects me to something that's innocent and pure, at least to that place. Like I said, comics have been there my entire life. Whether I was up, down, someplace in between, there was always some book, something that I could turn to and find that emotional connection that wasn't dependent upon anyone else or anything else. And like I said, television is such a collaborative dynamic that there's so many hands in it. And the same thing with film. That's work. It's satisfying work, but it's work nonetheless. Comics are comics. It feels like work now when you got an email box full of where's my stuff.
Right.
You were supposed to your deadline. You said you'd have it to me Friday,
Right.
and I said you got the wrong Friday. I meant the next Friday. But other than that, it still feels like another thing too is the community.
Okay.
You get a bunch of comic heads together, regardless of age. We all sort of fit a thing. Whether you can argue comics, whether you can be on the same page, whether we're talking about the culture as it's represented in comics. It's something beautiful about that idea. Just a place where people with huge imaginations that love the medium can all get together, and that's the better part of Twitter. That's the better part of conventions. It's the better part of doing stuff like this, is still feeling like a sense of community. And in a world where I think oftentimes you can feel detached, and it's a way of feeling like you're still a part of something. I kind of dig that too.
Now, what's interesting as a writer, like when you have the story in front of you, you controlling so much of the narrative of how things happen, the timeline, and things like that. I found it interesting as a writer, how much of your actual career were you able to narrate yourself or control? Like, how much of what you've done in the last, how long have you been in, as long as you've been in writing, how much of it were you able to actually write and plan out, map out yourself, and how much of it was sort of just, fell into place for you?
I mean, I've mapped all of it out. Whether or not somebody came along and spilled something on the map, or drew something on the map, that's damn near everything. That's called notes, or someone saying, no, I think we should do it this way. But virtually from the beginning, I mean, if you're talking about TV as well as comics, I've been fortunate that I'd say 65% of everything that I've done, I've been able to do it the way that I wanted to do it in some way, shape, or form. Again, you always have networks, you always have producers, you always have folks who come in and sort of have their say, and you got to listen to their say. Whether it makes sense or not, you still have to do it, because at the end of the day, that's what this all is. Even in comics, you have editors that come in and want a character to do a different thing, or they want a different tone. But all in all, I was a security guard at Walmart at one time, so this is all gravy at this point for me. It's like if somebody, doing it my way is relative, because hey man, somebody, hey, lock that door up, check that over there. This is way better than that. So
okay,
there you go.
So what was it? How did you get into writing, or how did you get into all of this at all?
Well, it's there's duality to that question. I think
Okay.
writing found me. I didn't find it. I've always had a relationship with words. I had a teacher tell me in junior high school that if I concentrated on being a writer as much as I did being a class clown, I might one day be a decent writer. And that's stuck in the back of my head. I think as far as the professional side of writing, I tried to do a bunch of other things and failed. I wasn't the best student. Tried to be an athlete. That didn't work out. Tried to do a lot of things between zero to becoming a writer. And writing was the only thing that I applied all of myself to, that I just really, really, really focused on. And things kind of fell in place and are still falling in place in a way that I could never imagine. And I've been very, very fortunate. And so, how did I do it? I think it's more of working hard at it, trying to always get better at it, and seemingly being fortunate enough that when opportunities came, I was ready to take advantage of the opportunity.
Okay. How much of it was sort of like being in the right place at the right time, or?
Well, all of it. All of it was being in there. Sometimes I didn't even know I was in a place to say whether it was right or wrong. But as hard as many mistakes that I've made to corrupt the opportunity, not knowing what to do or not understanding the politics or not, all of that kind of stuff. Seemingly, I've been fortunate enough to find the right people to guide me and put me back on the path. And, it all comes down to people. It all comes down to relationships, they say, but also awareness, understanding that you can make a mistake and maybe go left when you should have gone right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to listen, learn from the mistakes that you make, you can always get back on the path and hopefully find your way. But like I said, I've been fortunate that a lot of folks have come along and helped show me the way as well.
Okay. We have a question here.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Let's see.
What do I think of manga? I really, really dig manga. When I was over in Hong Kong, I read a lot of manga. The story and the pacing is different, and it's funny how, culturally over there, manga is so huge. Whereas like we were talking earlier about comics and how comics are, you got to find them. It almost feels like a cult thing sometimes, or subculture. I really dig manga. I dig the layers in manga. I dig how you can infuse philosophy and a lot of different subject matter into it. Same with anime. I think it's its own unique form of storytelling that I wish we had more of over here.
Do you see? It is something about the work ethic behind manga too. How prolific manga artists and creators are. That's always kind of fascinated me about the art form.
Well, I think that also plays into the success of it, is that it's always in your face. There's always enough of it to satisfy you. It's like with us, sometimes if you're talking specifically about Black comics, I don't know if it's so dependent upon so many other factors, sometimes politically, as to how many you get, what the storyline is going to be, that type of stuff. Whereas with manga, it always feels like it's right there. It's like it's always there, and it's always whenever you're waiting for the next one, you don't have a problem. It's just they keep cranking it out. So I agree with you as far as the work ethic and just that ability to be consistent and disciplined about it.
Yeah, because and I'm drawn to that because as a fan of Black indie creators and Black comic book creators, I'm actually always telling them that I don't think we are producing fast enough. I think that the demand that actually Black consumers are demanding. I think they're looking for more content, and that idea is always verified every time a new show hits TV. like, you know, something like Lovecraft Country, and like how huge, how well it takes off. And then when I look at, okay, what are we creating on the you know, on the book end? It's like we need to get more content out there.
But I think there's so many other factors other than just doing it. I know a lot of content creators that are doing a lot of books. I think distribution is an issue as far as comics are concerned. But I also think when it comes to TV and film, there's so many gatekeepers. You know, if you can imagine, you know, I think you and I are talking about the same thing and what we want to see, but that's specific to us culturally. If you've got to go through someone else who doesn't necessarily see the same thing we see, and they got to green light that thing, and they don't necessarily get the specificity and nuance we're speaking to about our culture, then they're going to go with something that they know. They're going to go with something that feels like, okay, I understand this, so I'm going to green light that. I don't think it's I think it's a lot of folks out there doing a lot of great stuff, but it's so hard to push that rock up the hill to get a green light and to get it on the air. I mean, think about Lovecraft Country. You had to have Jordan Peele, J.J. Abrams. You know, you had to have some big names attached to the thing to warrant, you know, the thing being made. It's like if everything had to have that, it's hard just getting that type of support. You know, it's hard to get in front of, you know, I know Ryan Coogler's developing Bitterroot right now, and that's a recognizable name. So Lord willing, that'll get done. And I know with I've got a decent company with me in the TV adaptation of Philadelphia, and you know, so it's all a matter of so many other facets that come into how a story gets made for television or gets made into a movie, especially with movies, because theaters aren't the same anymore, especially during COVID. What it costs to make a movie. You know, streaming helps. You know, now Netflix, Amazon, whatever. So you probably start seeing a lot of really cool stuff come through there. But it's easier said than done, is all I'm saying.
What is, like you were speaking of your, you know, bringing Philadelphia to, you said to TV or film?
Television.
There were some scenes in knowing that, because I heard that. So that I was reading, there was parts in the book, and I was like, wow, I wonder, is there anything in the book when you were talking about how free the comic books are? Is there anything in the comics that you are concerned with how it's going to translate to a television audience? Like, you know, going from speaking to a comic book audience, you know, not bringing that story to television. Is there anything that you created in the comics that you're thinking like, oh man, this is going to be, you know, a hot topic on social media? You know, nothing.
The thing that's worked for Philadelphia for me, and for the folks that dig it, is it's honest. You know, it's very, very honest. It's very visceral. The emotions feel like emotions, and the subject matter feels true to what I'm trying to say. And, you know, for me, it's more of course, executing it differently. You probably won't be able to pull off as many arms and rip off as many heads and do some of that stuff in the same way. Maybe not as much, but there'll always be some. You look at The Walking Dead, you know, they've been able to pull it off. I think for me, it's more of there's a gentle balance between the horror and the family stuff, the heart, you know, the emotional stuff. Being able to create a seamless sense of the two, a balance of the two, whereas the book sort of does it in a different type of way. Like in the book, I may have one issue is very, very active and violent from start to finish. In television, I might have to balance that out a little bit better. I may not be able to go balls to the wall and, you know, all of that. But it'll feel familiar. I mean, to the people who read the book, if they see the TV show, they'll be able to tell the relationship between the two.
And so what's the spinoff about? What this spinoff?
It's set in Baltimore. it's about a sister who her brother has been killed on the street, just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And on his way to either heaven or hell, he happened to see some demons entering into Baltimore. So instead of going to his final destination, he goes back to his sister and he tells her that bad things in Baltimore are about to happen. And she creates a blog, the Nightmare blog, for people to send in their paranormal problems, hoping that they would be directly related to these demons that have invaded the city of Baltimore. And just so happens that someone hits her up, and she's on the investigation of trying to take a demon out of, to stop doing certain things to a certain family. I can't give too much away. I probably already have already. But she's basically doing a paranormal, grassroots paranormal investigation that's sort of connected to her love and commitment to her brother and his memory.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Is there, we got a few more minutes here. Is there anything you want to close out with?
Not really. I mean, I appreciate, what you guys are doing and talking to all of us and all of us Black creators and, keeping the word out there of what we're doing and what we're all about. It's always important.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Actually, I got some time. It's become a recurring theme as far as speaking to the whole idea of being, quote unquote, a Black creator. That whole idea of, wanting to be known as good as opposed to be known as, the Black writer or the Black illustrator or any of that nature. But what I find so fascinating is that without this designation, for some of us, there wouldn't be an opportunity. So it's this weird predicament that I see a lot of creators are in, and I just wanted to see what side of that line that you fall on.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm going to say it's a good thing across the board because you got more brothers and sisters working probably in high profile gigs and across the board than at any time that I can remember in recent history, and doing things that really feel like real things that they have a lot of say in and it feel true to the culture, which is always a good thing. I mean, for me, selfishly, I've always loved the horror genre, and to be able to be in it. If somebody says, "Oh, I want a Black horror show," if one of the networks says, "Hey, we need a Black horror show in that spot, and we need a brother to do it," I'll take it. I'll do it. Whereas 10 years, I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I first got to Hollywood, I think it was in 1995. I had a version of Philadelphia that I had already put together as a movie. And I had a really high profile producer that really liked the script. And he said, "It's only one thing. Does there have to be so many Black people?" And I said, well, it was set in Compton at the time. I said, well, it's in Compton, maybe. And because, you want to sell it, you start looking for ways. Maybe there could be more police. Maybe there could be more of this, or, Compton used to be more integrated at a certain time. I could go back in history. I could do a thing. He said, no, I like the setting where it is. It's just, feels so Black. And he said, if Vampire in Brooklyn didn't make it, how would this make it? That had Eddie Murphy and Wes Craven, right. And I was thinking in that moment, how many Dracula movies have there been? Some horrible that made no money, some really, really good, some right in the middle. But with us, it was this thing of, if that movie didn't work, this wouldn't work. And it didn't matter the storytelling, didn't matter who you got as a director, didn't matter who produced it, didn't matter anything. It just mattered that the Blackness of the thing sort of was the limitation in his mind way back when. So now fast forward to where we are now, where a lot of things will probably be given an opportunity just because of the success of other things. Anytime, again, Jordan Peele, I think, opened the door. I think Black Panther opened the door. Those things were crafted so well that, I think you'll probably get some things that are okay, but the things that are crafted well are the things that will keep this movement going. And if we can be the ones behind the crafting, I think this will be here to stay.
Yes, sir. And I just want to add that I'm looking forward to your Blackula book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Blackula. My mother took me to Blackula when I was a kid. She probably shouldn't have. They called CPS. I don't even know if they had CPS back then, but it was Blackula and Scream, Blackula, Scream, and it stayed with me. So to be able to be messing around with Blackula at this point in life is, I look forward to it.
But I'm gonna tell you, and this has crossed my mind a lot. I'm actually interested to see a Black Vampirella type of character. I think you probably could get that. I mean, I played around with the idea, and I think the thing for me was, as much as I dig Vampirella, if you look at any of my work worth looking at, I'm always so connected to the reality, the emotions, the this, the that. Vampirella always felt like Hellboy to me. Like there was always it wasn't as grounded, for me. Right. It's like if somebody did what you're saying right now, I would go and see it. I'd buy the book, high five to it. But as far as me, I always wanted, I think for what I do, I always need some emotion. I always need something that feels grounded to my trauma somewhere along the way. I get you. All right. I appreciate it. Again, where can fans and retailers, they can find your books pretty much?
Well, you can find the books that are published through Image, everywhere, either image.com, Amazon, and also your local comic shop. You can find me at the Rodney Barnes on Twitter and on Instagram. I don't think they'll let me have anybody else on Facebook, but you can find me at those places. And I have RodneyBarnes.com is my website, and ZombieLoveStudios.com is my website as well. So you can find me through both of them as well.
All right. I appreciate your time, Rodney.
Likewise, brother.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
All right.